I think it's fair to say Codemasters have had a pretty good year. F1 2021 released in July to much acclaim, minus a couple of issues that have mostly now been resolved, and in the same month they unveiled Grid Legends at EA Play. Both games are very different when it comes to the on-track action. However, they do have one thing in common: a narrative story. For F1 2021, this comes in the form of Breaking Point, a self-standing story mode that sees players take on the role of Aiden Jackson, an up-and-coming driver graduating from F2 into the crucible of F1. For Grid, however, the game is more heavily dominated by its story, and takes inspiration from the Netflix F1 series Drive to Survive. So do Codemasters make movies now? And if so, will the rest of the gameplay be affected? I'm Mark from Racing Games, and today I want to look a little deeper into Codemasters' new narrative-driven direction. Part of any good racing game is letting the players craft narratives themselves on the track, be it taking the worst team on the grid to the top of Formula 1, or going from Moto 3 to the MotoGP champion. There is always a journey that lets you create villains and obstacles on the track, rather than in cutscenes. This is why F1 2019 worked well. It introduced you to two fictional rivals, F2 teammate and friend Lucas Webber, and the smuggest man alive Devon Butler, and then dropped them into career mode with you to continue crafting rivalries on the circuit. Breaking Point is essentially a follow-on, or reboot, of F1 2019's story mode. Devon Butler returns as the man you'd love to punch, along with a new roster of characters to expand the story. None of these characters bleed over into the rest of the game though, and perhaps at the end of the day that lets Breaking Point down. Isolating the story mode creates a divide for players. Some like that the two modes are kept apart, but personally I think it would have been more interesting to see them blurred together, allowing us as players to form our own narratives. Maybe seeing Lewis Hamilton's 8th World Championship hopes extinguished by the recently promoted Aiden Jackson, or even Casper Ackermann securing glory in his sunset season. I'm spitballing ideas here, but the point is there are stories to be told in racing games, and Codemasters could be about to deliver the perfect script. On-track storytelling was the name of the game for Grid when it landed in late 2019. Using an innovative AI called the Nemesis system, Grid attempted to have AI with a memory. If you got too physical and aggressive with your moves on one particular driver, they would begin to reciprocate in kind. This is perfect for a racing game. Now your overtakes have meaning. If you screw it up and take your rival out of the race, it could come back to haunt you. This sort of AI was something a lot of games would benefit from using, as the relentless perfection of AI's cornering or their ultra-high survival instinct makes offline racing far different from taking on other actual drivers. It added a level of detail to Grid races that you didn't see elsewhere, but that sense of rivalry and competition struggled to carry over from race to race. Grid was let down by the fact you rarely competed against the same AI competitors again and again, and the lack of any true championship structure made it hard for journeys and grand narratives to grow naturally. Overall, the game lacked a linking force that kept you coming back for more, instead feeling like a group of races that you just had to get through. Grid Legends could fix that right off the block with its story mode. At long last, staple drivers like Nathan McCain have a face and a voice, with professional actors taking on the roles within the grid. Legends sees you beating Nathan McCain and Raven West once more, but this time from the racing boots of an underdog who clashes with the antagonist in the pit lane and on the track. That's a familiar tale that could quickly become formulaic if not handled correctly, but I have a feeling that won't be the case here. Famous last words possibly? Growing a niche genre of gaming like racing is tricky, especially in a more generic title that doesn't have the backing of a real-world competition to draw in an audience. F1 2021 has the Formula 1 World Championship to entice in players looking for a road to glory type story. Grid Legends, on the other hand, has no real-world series to fall back on. Adding visually impressive narratives that take you away from the track is a good way to tempt in new players, but extensive cutscenes and overly dramatised racing are also a good way to neglect your core audience who just want to go racing. In the end, players want control. Control of the car, of the character, of their actions, and their choices. It's why games like Red Dead Redemption, Assassin's Creed and The Witcher are so popular. A cutscene is fine, but if the story is just linear, and the player's choices and actions within the game have no consequence on the direction of the story, developers might as well make a movie, not a game. Codemasters' move to storytelling is an interesting direction to take the genre of racing games, but these titles will all live and die on the racing, not the story. If the on-track action doesn't live up to expectations, then racers will go elsewhere. Thankfully though, Codemasters do have a secret weapon in their arsenal: their owners. Perhaps the most controversial take from this video, but I see EA's acquisition of Codemasters as a good thing. If Codemasters want to go the way of storytelling, what better way to do it than with the help of a publisher with experience in adding story modes to sports franchises? FIFA 17 debuted The Journey, introducing Alex Hunter to fans for the first time at E3 that year. Portrayed through motion capture and voice by actor Adetoyema Eden, it was jarring at first to have a playable character in a FIFA game, but very quickly fans warmed to the idea. So much so in fact that Hunter returned for FIFA 18 and 19, continuing the story in each entry. Grid Legends' trailer shows Nkuti Gatwa in the role of the main character, in other words, you. Bringing in professional actors like Eden and Gatwa shows that the developers mean business when it comes to their story modes. FIFA still allows you to create a career mode with a custom player for those of you who want to play their own story, but for those of you looking for something a little more structured, the journey was perfect. Players were still in control of Hunter's performances out on the pitch, with the story only taking place off-field. F1 has a similar setup, with career mode and My Team still available for those wanting to create their own narratives. Perhaps Grid can draw inspiration from these and give players that choice, thereby building an immersive story mode without losing their fanbase. That remains to be seen. Bringing story modes into motorsport games is always going to divide opinion. Some see it as a refreshing take on the genre, others perceive it as an unnecessary distraction. Ultimately, there's no right or wrong answer here, to each their own. So to the question, are Codemasters making movies now? Hopefully not, but if they're taking inspiration from Drive to Survive, this will make for an awesome mini-series instead. I've been Mark from Racing Games, and thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and feel free to join the conversation in the comments below. For now though, I'm off to finish my script draft for the story mode in Gran Turismo 7. Will Speedy McSpeedo finally win a race? There's only one way to find out.